When Karen, the HOA president, started encroaching on my garage, I endured in silence. But when she crossed the line, I decided I wouldn't just stand by anymore. Could I teach her a lesson in respect, or would I have to pay the price for my decision? Welcome to Karen Karma. Have you ever encountered a HOA that takes over your property? Share your story in the comments. My garage is located in the middle of a quiet neighborhood where I have lived my entire life. It's not just a place to park. It's a small corner that holds countless memories, where I keep family heirlooms passed down through generations. Every time I walk into the garage, I feel like I'm stepping back into the past, hearing the voices of my grandparents and parents, seeing them present through every item. The garage is not just a parking space, but a place where I can quietly reflect on what has passed and what is yet to come. It is my private space, an inseparable part of my life. This is where I find peace and tranquility, and above all, it is one of the last places I feel I truly belong. But one day, Karen, the HOA president, decided to invade this sacred space of mine. From the moment she became the president of the HOA, Karen began interfering with everything in my life. She imposed unreasonable rules, demanding that I excessively trim my trees, telling me to move my car from in front of my house, even though I had parked there for years without anyone complaining. Every time I heard her criticize me, it felt as though I was living in a prison where my freedoms were being taken away piece by piece. One morning, when I was mowing the lawn in front of my house, Karen appeared. She walked out of her house, holding a small notebook, her eyes scanning my property as if she were inspecting every small detail. She stared at the trees in front of my house and then spoke. You know, Karen began in a critical tone. This tree needs to be pruned. It's growing too thick. According to HOA regulations, you can't leave it like this. I put down the shears, feeling my face flush. This tree has been here since I was a child, I said, trying to stay calm. And I've always taken care of it. There's no reason for me to trim it the way you're asking. Karen didn't relent. Rules are rules, she insisted. If you don't prune the tree, I'll have to report it to the board. Her words felt like a slap in the face. Each passing day, I felt more cornered with no private space left. But what I couldn't stand anymore was her repeatedly parking her car in my garage without asking. That was when I knew I had to take action. One day, I walked out of the house, and my eyes immediately stopped at Karen's car parked in my garage. Everything inside me ignited. This was the point of no return. I walked up to the car, clenched my fists, took a deep breath, and stormed in with an angry voice. Maris, I yelled, staring at her car. You have no right to park in my garage like this. Karen looked up, her expression indifferent, with no surprise or apology. She simply responded calmly, as if I were making a big deal out of nothing. It should be fine, she said, her tone indifferent. I just parked temporarily. At that moment, I couldn't stay silent any longer. Should be fine, I yelled, my voice rising out of control. This is my private space, and you have no right to do this. Karen took a deep breath, as if her patience had run out. She turned to look at me, her gaze becoming sharp and defiant. She stepped closer, each of her heavy footsteps on the ground, and I could feel the tension in the air. What do you think you can do to me? Karen shouted, her voice sharp. You're not the only one living here. I'm the president of the HOA, and I have the authority to decide what happens in this neighborhood. She stood closer to me, so close that I could feel her hot breath. If you keep causing trouble like this, I won't hesitate to take you to the HOA board. You won't have a place here anymore. Do you understand? I felt my chest tighten with anger, but I still tried to stay calm. Karen looked at me as if I were just a child throwing a tantrum, not worth her concern. I felt like I was being pushed into a corner with no way out. Every time Karen came by, I had to face her unreasonable control and imposition. I even received a call from one of Karen's lawyers. At first, I didn't think I would be dealing with something like this. But when I picked up the phone, I heard the cold, determined voice of a man. "Hello," the man said, his voice void of any emotion. "I'm Maris's lawyer. I was instructed to contact you regarding violations in the neighborhood. Karen has reported that you're not complying with the HOA regulations." I clenched the phone, unable to believe what I was hearing. Maris is using her HOA power to invade my space. She's not only parking illegally, but also making unreasonable demands that I can no longer tolerate. I retorted angrily. The lawyer on the other end was silent for a moment before responding in a dry tone. "You need to be careful. We have the authority under HOA law. You're just an ordinary resident. If you don't comply, we will have to take stronger measures. You can't fight the whole HOA board." The lawyer's words felt like a cold bucket of water poured over me. But instead of being scared, my anger grew stronger. "Don't worry. I won't let this end like this. Karen may think she has the right to decide everything, but I'm going to teach her a lesson." We hung up without saying goodbye. I knew I couldn't let Karen and people like her manipulate my life. This was just the beginning. When Karen wouldn't stop and continued to increase her interference in my life, I knew I had to do something to make her understand that she couldn't just do whatever she wanted. My patience had run out, and what was coming was inevitable. I couldn't let Karen continue to act unchecked without facing consequences. I sat in the room, my heart full of anger, but also cold determination. She thinks she can do whatever she wants, invade my space without punishment. I thought to myself, if she doesn't understand respect, I'll teach her a lesson. The anger flared inside me, but I didn't act impulsively. I knew I had to do something strong, not just words, but real action. So I decided I wouldn't back down anymore. I would dismantle her car piece by piece and sell the parts one by one. This was the way I could teach her a lesson about respect. The next morning, I secretly entered my garage, preparing my tools. I carefully disassembled each part of her car, from the wheels and engine to other components. Every sound that echoed as I took apart each part made me feel a sense of satisfaction. Karen wouldn't be able to keep invading my life without facing consequences. Once I finished the job, I took each separated part and brought them to a nearby scrapyard. It felt like I had accomplished part of my duty. When I walked into the store, a middle-aged man sat behind the counter, his gaze filled with suspicion as he saw me bring in the old car parts. I knew I had to maintain a calm demeanor, not letting any excitement show in my heart. "I have an old car, selling it piece by piece, not intact," I said in a neutral tone, though I couldn't hide the sharpness in my voice. The man nodded, not asking any more questions. "You can bring whatever you have. We'll pay right away." I looked at the car parts from Karen on the counter and smiled lightly, feeling a sense of satisfaction. She needs to learn a lesson about respect, I told myself, wondering whether she would understand what she had to go through. Actions like this would make her think twice before continuing to act recklessly in this neighborhood. As I left the store with the money in hand, I felt as if I had won. I went straight to the children's charity fund. The manager there was stunned when I made such a large donation. I happily donated the entire amount from selling Karen's car. It wasn't about the money. It was about the sweet revenge of someone who had been hurt and oppressed. Karen would never forget this lesson. When Karen found out that her car had been dismantled and sold piece by piece, I could feel her fury about to explode. She came looking for me immediately, her eyes bloodshot, her mouth tight, and her hands clenched as if she were about to charge at me. When she appeared at my door, I wasn't surprised because I knew she wouldn't let this go easily. Karen stood in front of me, took a deep breath, and then shouted, her voice like a bomb going off right next to my ear. "What did you do to my car? You have no right to destroy my property like this." She pointed at me, her face flushed with anger, as if she wanted to tear me apart right then and there. I just stood there, calm enough to make her even angrier. I didn't rush to respond, just looked her straight in the eyes, feeling the tension in the air. After a moment of silence, I spoke, my voice still calm, without a hint of hesitation. "You have no right to touch my space," I said softly, as if I were stating the obvious. "Now you understand what it feels like to lose something valuable, don't you?" Karen took a deep breath, trying to control the anger rising within her. She choked on her words for a moment, then turned to me, her eyes filled with hatred. "I will sue you for destroying my property," she screamed, her face full of fury. "You will pay for what you've done. I won't let this go." I just stood there, looking at her with an untroubled gaze, then smiled faintly. The smile wasn't one of victory, but of confidence, as if I had everything in hand. "You can sue," I said, my voice steady, not a single tremor. "But you can't change the fact that your car is no more. And what you lost was the respect for other people's space. Now, you will have to pay for that lack of respect." Karen stood frozen, unable to say a word. Her eyes flashed with anger, but there was also a hint of realization that there was nothing more she could do in this situation. I didn't need to say more. The truth had been exposed, and I knew that, even if she sued me, she could not change what had happened. A quiet sense of satisfaction and triumph lingered within me. Karen would never forget this lesson. The trial between Karen and me took place on a morning in October, the atmosphere in the courtroom tense, as everyone sat quietly awaiting the final verdict. I walked into the courtroom feeling anxious, but also confident. This was my final opportunity to assert my rights and clarify everything that had happened. Karen sat across from me, her gaze sharp and full of contempt. She had hired a lawyer, a middle-aged man with a cold expression and confident demeanor. I could see Karen glancing at me, trying to hide her nervousness, but I knew she was worried. Throughout the trial, I didn't let her attitude affect me. The trial began, and I could feel the tension in the room. Karen's lawyer was the first to speak, defending her with a series of persuasive arguments, claiming that I had invaded Karen's property by destroying her car and that my actions had caused significant material and emotional damage. "Your Honor," Karen's lawyer began, his tone calm and confident, "this is a deliberate act of property destruction. We have enough evidence to prove that Mrs. Maris's car was dismantled and sold piece by piece without the owner's consent, causing severe damage to the value of that property." Karen sat quietly, her gaze fixed on me, as if she wanted me to feel guilty. But I wasn't shaken. I had prepared myself for all these accusations. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up, feeling the eyes of everyone in the room on me. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and calm, "I was not the first to initiate this action. For a long time, Maris has invaded my space, imposed unreasonable regulations, and made my life suffocating. She has parked her car illegally in my garage and interfered in every small detail of my personal life without any respect." I continued firmly. "She has continuously abused the power of the HOA to force me to comply with unreasonable rules. My actions were not property destruction, but a reasonable response to her excessive intrusion into my life. I could no longer endure this oppression." Karen's eyes began to flash with anger as I mentioned the things she had done. My lawyer continued presenting the evidence I had gathered, including photos of Karen's car being dismantled, as well as audio recordings of conversations with her, proving that I had warned her multiple times before deciding to take action. When my lawyer finished, the atmosphere in the room became even more tense. Karen now no longer had the confident look she had at the start. She began to show clear signs of confusion. Her lawyer still maintained his cold expression, but I could see the concern in his eyes. As we entered the final argument phase, I looked into Karen's eyes and spoke with a decisive tone. You think your power can impose on everyone, but you are wrong. I will not let anyone abuse their power without paying the price." The room went completely silent, except for the rustling of paper as the judge prepared to deliver the verdict. After a few minutes of silence, the judge spoke. "After reviewing all the evidence and testimony from both sides, the court has decided Mrs. Maris must compensate for all the damages to the plaintiff and immediately cease all actions infringing upon his personal rights. The court also orders that she must stop any threats and abuses of power that she has carried out." As the verdict was delivered, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Karen could not hide her anger. She stood up, her face red, while her lawyer remained silent, unable to counteract. I looked at Karen, feeling a gentle sense of satisfaction. "Did you think you could get away with this forever?" I said, my voice as cold as ice. "Never touch my space again." Karen stared at me, her mouth opening and closing, unable to say a word. "I can't believe it," she said, her voice choked, as if she couldn't believe what had just happened. With a light smile, I looked into Karen's eyes one last time, then turned and walked out of the courtroom. The court had delivered justice, and I had protected my rights. What do you think of this story? Have you ever encountered a Karen like this? Leave a comment and don't forget to like and subscribe to the Karen Karma channel.